Welcome to Warrior Commission Now, where we talk about practical ways to live out your commission with the Lord. I am Christine Casten.
And I'm Sharon Rudolph.
Sharon and I are here to talk about a kind of a question or maybe an encouragement of when all else fails, persist. And I think the question is, why persist? What's the point of persisting when it seems like everything is, falling apart or isn't happening the way you want it to, or the way you expected it to happen. And I think back to growing up, my mom had all these sayings that she would say that were encouragements for me. And so one of the things I distinctly remember is if at first you don't succeed, try again. And success has shifted as far as what I believe success looks like, since in my life. But it's that thing of, if first you don't succeed, try again. There's a persistence in that, in that question. So Sharon, what are some of your thoughts about persistence and the importance or the value of persistence?
Persistence makes everything different. And I have noticed in my life that oftentimes, right when I am ready to quit, it's that extra 5%. That gets you over the edge.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. It's like when it seems darkest, you're closest to.
Right. It's right there. And it makes all the difference. And the victory is that much sweeter. Mm-hmm. And yet persistence is something that truly is a choice to not settle. And I think that's where having a relationship with God makes a huge difference, because there's nothing worse than persisting for something and realizing, well, it wasn't God's best for me. Right. So if I'm going to persist at something, I want it to be part of God's plan, part of God's goodness on the earth for me, and not just, like you said, your definition of success has changed. My definition of success has changed. And in the world around us, where there's so much change going on, and so many people feel, what's the point, right?
Right.
Persistence becomes this point of character, this jewel that you have, and it can make the difference in a career. It can make the difference in a marriage. It really does. It's a linchpin for so many things. And there's this verse back to that book that helps us know how to live.
Amazing book. Yes.
Yes. In the Bible, Proverbs 25 verse 2. It's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. And persistence is very much like that, searching out and sticking with it. And in the Warrior Commission, oftentimes we talk about the journey, right? That it's not the outcome, it's the journey. And in the persistence, when you get to the thing you're searching for, it is so delightful, and look back at all the blessings that are in that journey of persistence. Yeah. So what have you learned in your life, Christine, about persistence?
It's necessary. It's I think when I think about, sometimes people ask us, well, why warrior? Why Warrior Commission? What's the deal with the warrior? And even my understanding of what a warrior is has changed over time as well. I used to think it was by my own free will, I'm going to make this happen, right. And there was a lot of not with God in that, in that mindset. And as God has helped me understand more about partnership and more about alignment with him and more about what it is to be in him with this journey, there's so much more that I've understood about why warrior, and the idea that there's a fortitude, there's a resilience, there's a tenacity that's part of a warrior mindset. And all of those things are about persistence. All of those things are how am I going to persist? What does that look like to see this thing when it looks darkest? It's darkest before the dawn, right?
Right.
When it seems darkest, it's right before the dawn. And it's where we step into, and you tagged it when you said the character that God's building in us to truly be persistent in him.
Yes.
And the persistence in him creates a persistence in all the things around us. So when, in earlier days, when I read it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, at first I thought, well, how mean, like, that's so mean. Why would he hide that from us? Until I realized it was actually a grace, because in our persistence, as our character is built, as our strength in God grows, as our strength and our confidence in who we are in him and who he is for us changes and develops and, matures, all of a sudden I realize how grace-filled God is, not to reveal a matter before it's time and before I'm ready. And in the time when I'm ready to carry that forward, I will steward that well. And that revelation and that understanding has something to fall on. In other words, foundations have been built within that persistence. And because of that persistence and that seeking, now all of a sudden I have the capacity within to be able to receive what God has concealed into this point and be able to carry it forward well with maturity or more maturity and responsibility. So for me, that it moved from God's mean to this amazing, wow, God, you are so full of grace, and your sovereignty and your majesty is so overwhelming and breathtaking to me because you're so wise.
Yes.
You're right. I could not do that back then, and I remember one time I was asking the Lord for an increase in, my confidence and my capacity for him. We call that an upgrade. And so I was asking him for this huge upgrade, and he's like, that will kill you, because I just wasn't ready to make that big of a shift. But what I was able to do was he gave me what I was able to handle. And then he was able to give me the rest of it once that had been established in me. But those foundations have to be there. And so to me, the why persist is such a key critical component of what it is to be a believer in this earth.
Yes. And I think it's a good time. In this season to start asking God, I've been persistent. Mm-hmm. What do you have for me now? Or God, how do you want to help me persist? Mm-hmm. Because I want to be ready. Mm-hmm. We have another video about watershed and just how the season that we're in, there's so much that's new. Yeah. And there's so many who've been persistent for so long. God's getting you ready for what's going on now. And for others who are just becoming aware, maybe the question is, God, are there things in which I need to persist to be able to get the most out of where we are now? Yeah. And if you'd like to be part of a community that talks about these kinds of questions, that values persistence and trains in persistence, especially in our relationship with God, come check out the Warrior Commission. Mm-hmm. Our website is thewarriorcommission.com. You have an ability to ask questions about our community. You can come check us out. We would love to be able to help you in your persistence and all that God has for you in your commission with him. Thanks for joining us today.